Hi,
Bye.
everybody. Today we're going to try out a completely new format. It's called the world's smallest debate. This is an idea that Marco and I came up with, where each of us has 5 minutes to present five bold ideas with images and then engage in debate for just 10 minutes. Okay. So here we go. So the first idea I want to put forward is that transformation is not the same as change. It's a massive wave of change that actually hits the surface, and we don't realize it until it really comes, and it's massive. So it's not the same as change. And I talk about this because most leaders talk about transformation in their companies without realizing that when you're in transformation, you only have two choices: direction and moment. That means that if you're a wave surfer like in the Nazaré, where the canyon produces this massive amount of water, you have to be humble and realize that you can only choose the direction in which you want to cut the wave and the moment you want to drop in. Everything else is in the hands of nature. So the metaphor for companies is that change is actually a choice of the people, and it does not happen as we actually think about it. So transformation does not happen as a cascade. Everybody thinks that this idea works, but I've actually never seen it work. The CEO sends an email and thinks that the first line directors are going to do the same and that everybody else is just going to obey and change the company as if it were magic. But it's such a shallow idea. I have never seen this work because actually, when we think about it, we've seen the innovation adoption cycle time and time again. And we know that if we are to provoke change in a company, we need to actually convince people that the future is better than the past. Now, there are gullible people, enthusiasts, and maybe visionaries, but after summoning and creating a coalition of those people, we have this big chasm, just like in the Nazaré. And that's where we have to cross over and win the skepticism of the pragmatists. And it's so difficult because you need to have 51% of your population wanting more to engage with the future than being proud of the past. And that is just like winning elections. So the first thing that I typically tell leaders is that in transformation, you have to be humble. You have to actually acknowledge that people are going through change and they don't like change, because every time you engage in change, it's very clear what you're going to lose, but it's not obvious what you're going to win. So we all go through the emotional cycle of change, which we all know so well. And leaders have to bear in mind that everybody's going through this cycle. So we all have to be very humble, very human to actually engage and listen to people so that they will actually dance the dance of transformation. Now, why am I talking about dance? Because really, when you look at transformation in the common world, like at a party, you do realize that you're just watching a transformation process. So in Portugal, where we have the Santos Populares, or maybe what we call our popular folk parties, what happens typically is they'll set up the party 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. The sun is starting to dim out, but they're still trying out the sound. They're already on, they're having a barbecue. Guys are having beers, and the ladies, they want to dance. So all of a sudden, two ladies pop up, they start dancing with each other, and there will be a gentleman that will interrupt and say, "Lady, may I have this dance?" So what happens is this guy's best friend grabs another lady and they start dancing in duos. And that's the secret to transformation. You do not need anybody to give you the example of change. You don't have a choreography to do. You just engage with someone in simple dance. So I typically say that transformation in companies is actually fueled by envy and inspiration. And the only thing you really need to do is find someone to dance. So cut the crap. You don't need your leader to give you an example. Now, the fourth idea that I'm bringing forth is that transformation is hard because it's also a collaborative endeavor. So after going through duos, we have to engage in a perspective where we are all blind towards the future. And it's no longer about finding out who's smart and who has the best idea in a meeting, but actually summing up the points of view of everyone. In India, they use a parable of the six blind men and the elephant, by which each blind man is actually grabbing a part of the elephant and stating actually what he can actually observe. So one will say that it's like a sword, another will say like an elephant is like a hairy snake or a trunk of a tree. But in essence, the parable, the conclusion, the moral of the story is that they will only find out what an elephant is if they sum up all their perspectives, because every reality has at least 360 points of view. So if we want to engage with the future, if we want to engage with transformation, we have to sum up the view of everybody. The hardest part, though, I'd say, is it all starts with you. So if we're going to embrace transformation, especially in the era of AI, I think we all have to acknowledge and ask ourselves, when we look at ourselves in the mirror, are we ready to engage in change? Are we ready to dance and learn? And that is my presentation, 5 minutes. Thank you so much.
Amazing. There we go.
Prepare for Marco's 5 bold ideas on transformation and AI.
Awesome. So here we go. The first image I want to show you, it's quite interesting. It's an ad that carriages were using to actually fight when cars were coming to town. So instead of embracing and focusing on the differentiation that they had, they actually decided to show all the bad things that a car could have, that you would become crippled, as you could see this guy, as if the same couldn't happen with a carriage. And I think that is the first thing that happens with us as humans. We first go into the most extreme things when some change is coming towards us, and ultimately that doesn't help us. I think the other thing that happens is we like to make these very bold predictions. Like in this example, we've been predicting self-driving cars for so many years, almost 10 years. We've predicted that some professions are going to completely disappear, but that finally didn't happen. So how does this help us? How do the predictions work? I think what we need to do when it comes to change and transformation, instead of thinking of bold predictions, is more trying to take a guess. Now, for instance, we're talking about the big transformation that's happening. And Thiago, you were talking about it. It's AI. Maybe instead of making bold predictions, let's just try to think, what are the things that me as a marketer, for instance, which is my role, how is my job is going to look like in 2 years? And all I can do is try to get a guess on that and help my teams navigate that and help myself get the right skills for that future. Then a lot of what happens right now is when we see a big change coming, we decide to either fight it or actually not do anything at all. And I think it's scary. I understand when we have something very big like the net zero wave, it's scary. No human likes something very big to come at us very fast, but I don't think that's necessarily the solution. A lot of what I see is also that we go into all the negative things on the transformation. Again, let's talk about AI. I'll give you a picture that I found recently. Probably, Thiago, you watched the Olympics this year, and this is how a photo finish is made. So a machine takes a picture and determines who wins when it's a close call. Now, do you know how the photo finish was done in the 1964 Olympics in Tokyo? It was 22 people. 22 people looking at the finish line at the same time. How is there not bias on that? So in this case, if we think about it, the technology removed the bias from the decision and made a way more objective decision. And the last image I want to show you is a spell checker. You probably use a spell checker. I use a spell checker. And we have this idea that when we have these tools and these technologies, if one day something happens, we won't ever be able to go back. That is a point of no return. And I use this spell checker as an example of something. Yes, it saves me time, it saves me energy, it reassures me. But maybe one day if I had to, I would go back and be able to write without it again. So a lot of what we do with this change and these transformations is to think, oh my God, what if this disappears? We'll become so reliant on it. And we underestimate the ability we have to adapt.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you so much, Marco. So let me just share a couple of ideas that you made me actually learn. The first is that the narrative that we use actually helps us either deter or actually not do anything about transformation. I thought there was a great parallel between what people say in companies when they expect their leaders to give an example. And that's the way of actually not taking responsibility for change. And what you were saying, which, in the comic and the cartoon strip, which is your narrative actually puts off or actually makes change never happen. But I do think that there's a vicious cycle in the end where there's always revenge. I think, change is undeterrable. You might not get the date right, but I think that, at the end, technology will always triumph because it helps people actually achieve much more in life. But I found a parallel there, which I really loved. Another thing that I really was excited about is when you ask yourself, or when you take too much time asking about is it good or bad, yes or no, I think you miss out on the question which you were asking, which is how can I use it as a professional? It
Mhm.
could be, you could ask yourself that question as a marketer, but in any other role, like how will technology help me? Instead of taking the approach of the red pill or the blue pill, is this good? Is this bad? I'll just wait out and see. And I think that's actually very powerful too. And the last one is, you made me think about the opportunity that technology, especially because it's unbiased, might have in things which are really important to us, like democracy and other aspects of social life that go beyond technology or marketing or business. And I think that was really cool. Thank you for that.
No,
Any
and the
ideas?
last one, you're right. I think on the bias, we always assume that the machines are trained on human data, and we are biased as humans. But what the machine can do is to spot it, and if you can spot it, you can actually remove it. And I think that's something we underestimate with technology. The other thing that you were saying, and that I was thinking, we go so quickly into the extreme of complete replacement. Yeah. We always tell this saying, okay, books are going to come and ebooks are going to replace books completely. I mean, do you only read on ebooks? How many people do you know that still buy books? Same with
Yeah.
e-commerce was the same. Oh, e-commerce will never, stores are going to disappear. We're never going to go to stores. I mean, everyone is going to stores. E-commerce has a convenience factor, but a lot of people still going to stores. So I think
Mhm.
that's just our human psyche is a way to, we bring it to the extreme to avoid dealing with it. And it's just funny. We're just as humans, we're funny like that. But I think ultimately that doesn't help us.
Yeah, that doesn't portray the future, at least history, right? Because the
Mm.
examples we're giving about these bold predictions, I heard a phrase recently that said something of the sort that we're very bold in short-term predictions, but really we underestimate the impact of long-term change. And I think that made a lot of sense. It resonated with me as well. Another thing that I think is exciting is to pick up on your experience about how people are actually using AI and how you observe them when they get excited about it. Could you share a couple of stories? Because you have all these delightful stories. Today you only had 5 images, but you're always telling me these amazing stories about how it's being used, how people react. Do you have a couple?
The funniest I heard recently was a lady. She came to me at the end. She said, ChatGPT changed my relationship. I said, really? How? So she said every time she has an argument with her husband, they take ChatGPT with voice, they put it in the middle of the table, and they start arguing back and forth like a mediator. And she said the quality of the arguments 2x because they have kind of a mediator, is like a couples therapist that is there, and she sometimes argues, say, yeah, don't you think he has done this, etc., and he always shows a different perspective. That is quite interesting. The second
Yeah.
one that I'm hearing a lot is kids, the way kids are using some of these things. So a dad told me that his 15-year-old, every time his dad tells him something when they're discussing something, a topic, he goes into ChatGPT and challenges him back. So basically saying that now he also needs to go into ChatGPT because the kid is so smart because of the technology that he needs to up their game. So I think we're just right now seeing how these things can be used for our day to day. And you didn't hear me talk about, doing avatars or doing coding. I'm talking about very practical things on the day to day that I think you and I use. How do you use it, for instance, recently? You told me a couple of stories also.
Yeah, I mean, as a consultant, we've heard so many stories of how AI has actually inverted the total process of thinking. So for one, I've recently seen companies that are doing ideation sessions, like brainstorming sessions, inverting the process. So instead of asking people to come up with ideas, they actually, they feed a bot with a lot of information. Then they ask the bot to give out crazy ideas, and then they make people work on how
Mm.
would they actually execute the ideas. So instead of using people to come up with, shallow ideas or medium quality ideas, because it's very hard for people to actually, create and be very original when they're doing it in a group. Um, the inversion of the process created such an amazing amount of impact there. The other thing, which I think is quite curious, is that as a career counselor, I've actually helped a couple of people use ChatGPT to ask questions about, what type of roles could they actually pursue, which companies are recruiting the most, how would they actually do a very interesting cover letter. And so, for all the type of relationships that or businesses that are related on one-to-one, I think that learning to prompt actually challenges, the way that you actually look at the business in itself and the way that the learning curve can be shared. And so when you have these type of processes where people feel very alone about change, I think that ChatGPT is also a very good companion. It's crazy because we all saw the movie Her. I don't think that anybody's going to fall in love with ChatGPT right now, but I think that's also like something that makes a lot of sense today.
A lot of people that I talk to, they use the expression, "It's my best friend at work." And I think that's a good way to think about it. Also, one of the things I've been reading a lot about it, I think obviously there's an epidemic of loneliness, and a lot of what we think sometimes, I'll give you an example. In Korea, they gave 7,000 GPT-enabled dolls to old people, and they reported incredible engagement, less depression, less anxiety. So if you think about loneliness, and obviously all these things need to have guardrails, all of that. I'm not questioning the ethics of all of that, but I'm thinking they have such a role to play. If you're a solopreneur, for instance, you don't have anyone to discuss something. If you want to do something, if you're a consultant, can give you a first idea. If you're a leader and you have a people issue that you just want to have a safe space to discuss with, obviously without confidential information, that is an incredible potential that allows you to have that kind of companion. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's another thing which you shared a couple of weeks ago, which I found was quite interesting. And now it strikes me as a great example of what you're saying, which it was the prompt that you shared, the 3 questions about how ChatGPT could actually make you know yourself better. And I think when you look at that as your personal coach, I think that's also quite interesting. So could you share those prompts? Because I'm sure that everybody's going to get really excited and try those out in a minute.
Yeah, so the first one is going to ChatGPT or whatever you use, Claude, and say the prompt, tell me everything that you know about me. Don't put your name. Tell me everything that you know about me. And the reason you don't put your name because you don't want it to go to the web. It's basically only in the interaction. The second prompt is, based on this, tell me something that I might not be aware of. And the third thing, then, after you do that, based on what you see and what I'm not aware of, can you please recommend me some resources, books, podcasts for my self-development? And it's incredible because it almost is, you're talking with a mirror. And that is quite interesting. It's nothing that is on the web. It's simply a reflection of the information you put there, but also how it considers some of the interactions between you and the machine and how it reflects back on you.
It's cool.
Give it a try.
Really how technology will have a perception. I actually tried it out, and I do have the books on my shopping list. But I'm curious to know what everybody's going to find. I do encourage everybody to give us some feedback about the smallest debate in the world. I hope you don't mind, Marco, if I say steal away, because I think we're in an election period, and I think that debates should be much more constructive and much more about learning than actually winning or losing. And thank you so much for sharing this idea with me and trying it out. It was cool.
Absolutely. Have a good day. Looking forward to the next one.
See you soon.